The year is 2015, and it's around 10:30 p.m. on a Thursday night at the North Arizona University. A party gathers around a location known as the courtyard. The courtyard is located close to a suite-style campus living community called Mountain View, and on this night, many students who were not attending the party were spending the evening as they normally would, getting ready for bed, studying, and hanging out with friends. Collectively, the students' attention had been captured by something happening out in the parking lot outside of their windows. To give you an idea of the layout of this area, you can see on screen now the Mountain View Hall with the parking lot next to it, and then a road that separates the parking lot from a set of apartment buildings, which is where the party was happening, the courtyard. As mentioned, something was occurring in the parking lot, which saw many of the students run to their window to see what was going on.
I was in my room with my roommate and then my suite mate, one of my suite mates.
And what were you guys doing?
We were crafting for our littles in our sorority.
I was just in my room with my roommate. We were playing guitar, doing some homework, just relaxing, and I was getting ready for bed.
Had you been out that night drinking at all?
I had not. I'd been in my room playing video games.
Okay. Was there something that happened that woke you up?
Yes, I heard arguments and shouting from outside in the parking lot.
When we were making our crafts, I heard yelling outside, and so I went and looked out the window, and there was just a bunch of boys outside arguing with each other, and which is not really uncommon for Mountain View. There's always like yelling outside at nighttime, so I didn't think anything of it.
You didn't think of anything of it, but you looked out the window anyways?
Yeah, just because nosy, I guess.
Okay.
There's always arguments or loud noises coming from the parking lot. It's very loud, especially on the weekends, but this was a little louder than usual.
It sounded like drunk guys walking by. You know, we live in the sorority in the fraternity hall, so I just assumed it was drunk guys walking by.
I heard the words "fucking faggot." There's two groups arguing with each other. Two of the boys kind of got it more heated with each other, but then the friends separated everything. So one of the groups started walking away. I think they both kind of started just the friend just separated it, and it kind of was, I thought it was going to end, like, okay, everyone was going to go home. What I recall is one of the boys yelled something. I don't know what they yelled, I didn't hear, but obviously it didn't make one of the other boys happy. So one of the boys in the group walking to Franklin Street ran back to him and shoved him. And then all the other friends came running to either stop it or get involved. I'm not sure.
There was some shouting. Someone might have said something that another person didn't like, and then I just saw someone shove another person.
I guess it was kind of, it just seemed like I blinked my eyes and then someone had a gun.
I was watching a show with my roommate, and she kind of notified me. She's like, oh, it sounds like there's yelling outside. And I was like, really? And I lift myself from my bed, and our windows are open, and before you know it, I just heard gunshots.
I saw everybody, just that cluster of guys like I had mentioned before, and then I just saw him walk up with the gun, the flashlight on. He shot Colin in the chest first, and then the other victim. And then that's when my attention was a little distracted. I didn't really understand what had just happened.
I thought they were fireworks at first. I didn't realize they were gunshots, and as I looked out the window, I thought it was a flashlight. I didn't realize it was a gun at first.
2 gunshots first, and directly 2 after, it felt like. So 2 and 2.
When I saw that and I heard the gun go off, it didn't really put it together. I didn't really think it could be real. I thought maybe it was a BB gun or something. And then when I saw someone hit the floor. Sorry.
I heard one of the victims on the ground screaming, saying that he was dying. It was Colin.
At that point, I believe there were 2 on the ground.
At that moment, jumped off my bed, told my roommate to call the police, and I ran outside.
Why did you do that?
I can't give you an answer. It was just an instinct.
I saw a girl run out of nowhere and approach one of the guys that was on the ground and started putting pressure to his wounds.
I remember seeing one person on the floor first, and he was bleeding, and that's who I primarily stuck with, which was Nick. I got down, I put my palms in his gunshot wounds, told him to stay calm.
There was a girl in the parking lot, and she was in a lighter color, it might have been white or pink, and she was in a parking space, and there was somebody she was kind of helping.
I put my left palm on his right shoulder, where he was shot, my right palm on his left hip. I pretty much just kind of stared at him and told him to calm down because he was screaming and crying. And I remember looking to my back right, and Colin was there. He was bleeding pretty bad, and
Did you see the shooter do anything else?
Yes, he was near the one of the victims that wasn't moving. He was in a squatted position, the shooter.
Did you notice the person who was attending to Colin? Was there somebody attending to him?
yes, I do remember them almost behind him and holding him up. It's very blurry, but I do remember seeing a figure in a white shirt charging to my right, and hearing, "I don't want to do this."
Well, they threw a couple punches at him, I think maybe trying to get the gun away or trying to get him away from the guy that was laying on the floor.
I don't know who he was or what he was wearing, but somebody started punching the guy that was trying to help Colin.
When the other people that were standing around threw a couple punches at him, he obviously wasn't in full control of the gun. He was kind of taken back, I think, and then stepped back a few steps and got re-control of the gun. And
I saw that, and I looked back at Nick, and then there was another round of gunshots, and then I put my body on top of Nick's.
He shot the gun in the air 4 times.
Did you look back at that person, or?
No. Oh,
So
nope.
you just covered?
Just covered Nick.
That was pretty brave, Mikey. What was going through your head?
To be entirely honest, I was preparing for a bullet to go through my back. Or my head. Hoping my head so it'd be quick and easy, but back.
it hit 2 people. I didn't see them go down or anything, but they said, I got shot, and then ran off.
All I remember seeing was someone with a hood backing up and saying, excuse my language, but what the fuck, repeating it, and like, what did you just do?
Was the shooter saying anything? Did you hear him saying anything?
The only thing I can remember him saying is, I didn't mean to. That's the only thing I can remember.
It was just chaotic noise around me, people moving. I was pretty panicked. I got my phone out and I dialed 911.
There's a guy outside and he's shooting people. Where are you located? We're at Mountain View at Northern Arizona University. He has a gun. He's shot people. Please emergency. He's shot people. And he's... okay. This is Mountain View, and I'm heading to the yelling right now. We're still over there. Okay, you're not somebody else. We do have people.
Mountain View. If you know, call us right now. It's 3 shots, probably a minute break, and then 2 more shots.
People laying on the ground, he hasn't shot.
I remember Nick screaming and telling me to run to Colin and that he needed help. But I couldn't leave him, so I stayed with Nick. I kept looking back at Colin and seeing him try to pretty much live, he's struggling. And I couldn't leave Nick. Like I said, I can't leave you. You're bleeding pretty bad, and I'm just gonna stay with you. And I was screaming at the boys, someone to run to Colin and put their hands on him and try to stop any blood, anything that they can do.
When I arrived in the parking lot, there was the girl that I had previously seen. She was hunched over helping somebody who had been hurt, and then I saw somebody who was standing back, and I approached them to ask them what was going on. He turned around, and I just noticed a quick movement of the hand moving towards behind his back, and I could kind of see the bottom end of like a handgun. And so at the time, my train of thought went, okay, I'm going to not worry about these other people and make sure I'm not going to get hurt myself. After that, I started to talk to this said individual because I didn't know what was going on. I didn't want to become somebody else who was hurt. I didn't want to turn my back and somehow end up, because I didn't know what was going on. So I started to talk to him and try and, figure out what was going on.
What do you mean very lightly?
I didn't really want to know what was going on. I just didn't want to be another casualty or somebody hurt along with everything else. The next action was I kind of started talking to him, trying to take the gun kind of out of the picture, get it out of anybody's hands at that point, just so that it wasn't something that could be used or anything like that.
Were you ultimately successful in your endeavor to take the gun out of the picture?
Yes. There was a sidewalk with a small curb, so the gun was put down on the other side of the curb closest to me, and then I basically kind of stood over it till police arrived. The individual started to kind of walk away from where he had just put the gun down, and he walked towards the gate, leaving that parking lot. Sirens had kind of started in the distance. You could hear them. They were coming up, so the police were coming.
As I approached the area, I observed several subjects in the area of the southeast corner of Lot 7A. There were several subjects on the ground. There was screaming and yelling.
At first I saw a group of males on the ground. One of them was yelling, "I'm shot." So I directed my attention to that male. I asked him, "Where are you shot?" And he kept yelling, "I'm shot."
When I initially arrived on scene, I heard my fellow officers ordering people to get on the ground. I ran over to the scene. We detained several individuals within the parking lot.
And I approached the area where I just saw, in layman's terms, general chaos. There were groups of people scattered all around, and it was kind of hard to make sense of what was going on as it was pretty dark out as well.
At that point, myself and other officers instructed everybody to the ground. At that point, we didn't quite yet know exactly what was happening. And essentially, we were just trying to secure everyone who was there. Ordered everyone to the ground and started placing handcuffs on individuals who were there. So in the first group of people, there was one individual who was screaming, pretty much in agony. Rolled him over, looked at his lower back, noticed there was a gunshot wound there. There was one individual who was laying on his back with his legs crossed, and he appeared to have a gunshot wound to his chest. 10 to 15 feet away from that individual was another male who was laying on his back, screaming in pain, who stated he was also shot. I immediately looked at him, could tell that it appeared he was in bad shape.
At that point, we weren't quite sure what was going on, and so we began giving verbal commands to everybody who was present in that area. Myself, along with several Flagstaff police officers, began giving verbal commands to those subjects to get on the ground until we could determine exactly what was going on.
Policemen come, ambulance, firefighters, and the policemen run up and have guns on all of us, asking us to put our hands up. I personally don't, because I am holding on to Nick. They can see that I'm unarmed, but as during that time, they're still obviously not knowing who has a gun.
At that time, we didn't know who was involved, who was the shooter. We had no further information at that point what exactly happened. We were just trying to determine at that point who was involved and possibly who was a threat.
It took a little bit of time just because of the screaming and the yelling, but eventually we were able to get everybody on the ground and compliant. Once we had that control, we began to render aid.
People were running back across the street towards the courtyard, so I ran back. So I followed. I was running back towards the courtyard, yelling for Nick Prado.
At that point, were you also dating one of the witnesses in this case?
Yes, Nick Prado. He was running back towards me, yelling my name too, and that's when I saw him holding his neck. After that, it gets fuzzy. Okay. I can't remember where I went after that.
I observed a female running pretty frantically towards my vehicle as I was getting out.
Did you at that point follow her and find out what that was about?
Yes.
Okay, and where did you go?
I went to apartment number 1 at 262 East Franklin Ave. There was multiple people inside. I observed a subject laying on his back, holding his neck, and there were some other gentlemen around him.
I don't recall much. My vision was starting to get blurry at that point. I remember being brought into the house by people, them laying me down on the floor in the kitchen, people trying to tend to me, trying to get me a towel for my neck or anything that I can use to put pressure on my neck until the ambulance showed up.
I observed one male individual on the ground and a female applying pressure to some wounds, and then another male individual just past the sidewalk in some either gravel or mulch that was laying motionless.
He was just laying, not moving. I holstered my weapon and went down and ate the male that was not responding. He did something to the effect of gasping for air. I told another officer that he's still breathing. That's why I got down, cut his shirt, and I tried to provide first aid. As I was cutting his shirt open, that happened again.
The gasp for air?
Correct. And that was the last movement I saw from that person. Then I noticed that he had a gunshot wound on his upper right side of his chest. Then another officer was there with me, and we switched at that moment, and he began performing CPR.
Then I took over chest compressions on the unconscious, not breathing subject in the lot. At that point, I did relay that we needed medics to our location first, as we had a subject who was not breathing, and I believe that was the highest priority in terms of medical treatment at that time.
I look to my back right, and they're doing CPR on Colin. And I just remember them still screaming, "Is he breathing? Is he breathing?" And he wasn't.
I believe it was approximately 01:35 hours.
And what was that status?
The Flagstaff Fire Department informed me that he was deceased. At that point, I went and obtained a blanket from the rear of my patrol vehicle and placed it over him, just because of the large number of people that were outside and the fact that there's several windows that face that crime scene.
He performed CPR for a little while, but then went to the ambulance and got a sheet and covered the body.
There was several people directing me to a handgun that was laying towards by the tree on the southeast corner of the parking lot.
People yelling that the firearm was on the other side of the parking lot. So that's when I stop helping them, directing my attention to.
Well, at that time, we still hadn't determined who all was involved or what was going on. There were still people, like I said, freely walking around. It did not seem safe to leave a loaded weapon on the ground when there was people freely walking around and we didn't know exactly who could be involved.
The shooter lifted up his hands and ran to the police that showed up to the scene.
At that point, did you approach someone, or did someone approach you that you ultimately arrested?
I did.
And who was that?
That was Mr. Stephen Jones.
Okay. Did he identify himself as a shooter at that point?
He did.
And was he taken into custody at that point?
Yes.
Turn around. Everybody on the ground. On the ground. On the ground. Raise your hands up.
Shot, go help them.
Hold on. You do not move. Do not move.
Please go help them, officer, please. Please. Please go help them, I'm so sorry, please. Please go help them. Please, officer, please. Help me, I'm so scared.
I'm going to need at least 3 or 4 ambulances at least. I have one detained. He identified himself as a shooter.
Please.
Hang on.
I'm so scared, I want my mom.
Stand up. Where's the firearm?
It's over there by the guy with the flannel and the beard. Please, officer, I'm so scared. Please help me.
Hey, hang on. Gilbert, there's a guy who is wearing a flannel. He has a beard. The gun is over there.
Oh my God. Officer, please help. Officer, please. Please, I'm so sorry, please.
Hang on, buddy. Hang on.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Hang on.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God, no.
Sir, what is your name?
Please, officer, please. Oh my God, I want my mom. Oh my God, please.
Hang on, sir, hang on.
Oh my God.
Is your name Stephen?
Yes, sir. Please,
Stephen, do you have any weapons on you?
No. Please.
Is this cell phone?
Yeah. I'm so scared. Can you help me?
Hang on. Stephen, come with me.
Okay. I'm so scared. Oh my God, please help me. I'm so scared. I can't. I can't.
Have a seat.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Just have a seat.
I can't be
Have a
alone,
seat.
please.
Have a seat.
The shooter is identified as 18-year-old Stephen Jones. He's an only child and had recently started up at NAU around 4 weeks prior to this. When taken into custody, Stephen exhibited signs of feeling nauseous and was on the brink of vomiting. He was crying and seemed to have been in a state of shock and panic. He also asks multiple times about how his friends were doing and the state of the people he had shot. The people who were injured were Nick Perring, who was shot in the arm and hip, Nick Prado, shot in the neck, Kyle Zintek, shot twice in the back, and 20-year-old Colin Brew, shot twice in the chest. 3 of the individuals survived, but Colin passed away at the scene. Kyle, in particular, had the most severe injuries of the surviving 3.
Were you called into the emergency department at that time?
Yes.
Were you already there, or were you called in?
No, I was called in. It was close to 2 a.m. I saw all 3 of them and focused mainly on Kyle.
Okay.
He was the most sick one.
Kyle Zentek?
Zentek, yes. He was what we call a critical trauma. And so basically that's anyone with injuries that are life-threatening. He had already been intubated when I arrived by Dr. Kaufman. There were 2 foreign bodies which appeared to be bullets. One was up in the chest and one was down in the right lower pelvis. So basically, based on where the bullets were and the wounds, we were worried about major injuries, organ injuries within the abdominal cavity. So that's why we went to the OR. We were going to open them up and look and see what was going on. So there's injuries to the rectum, which is the last part of the colon. There were holes there, and there was stool spilled out from there. So we needed to staple that off. There were also about 5 holes in the small intestine, so we needed to staple that off, otherwise it would have continued to leak. So we resected that. The liver had a through-and-through injury, and that was bleeding, so we just put packing around the liver. There was also a hole in the diaphragm,
So we oversewed that, put sutures in there to close that up. And then with that injury to the diaphragm, there was air trapped around the lung, so we had to put in what's called a chest tube to vent or decompress the lung so that he could breathe.
Can you tell the jury, doctor, what would have happened to Kyle if he hadn't been given the treatment that he received at FMC that night?
He would have died.
At 7 in the morning, I took over the service. Kyle was in the ICU after having surgery with Dr. Berger, and I was involved with his subsequent trauma care there. I got involved because some of the drains that he had in were bleeding quite a bit. When I went back, we took off the dressings in the operating room and re-explored the abdomen. We'd notified the kidney doctor, the nephrologist, before we went back because he had an injury to his kidney as well. But when I went back and looked in his abdomen, he had several segments of the intestine that had been removed, and everything looked healthy, and I started putting those back together as I waited for the urologist to arrive. When the urologist arrived, we determined that the kidney was not able to be salvaged as it was bleeding and leaking urine. And so the urologist and I removed the right kidney. And then I continued to put the rest of the intestine back together.
When you woke up, did you know what had happened to you?
I was on a lot of medication.
And what was your understanding about what happened to you?
I was shot twice in the back, one in the left butt cheek and then right in the right lower back. I had lost a kidney. I had to have some part of my intestines removed and a ostomy bag put on. I had believe a broken rib, a tube up my nose and down my throat, and pretty gnarly scar.
How long were you in the hospital?
I believe the first time I was in there 11 days.
Okay.
Stephen Jones goes to trial for first-degree murder and multiple counts of aggravated assault. His defense being self-defense. Throughout the trial, 36 eyewitnesses were called to the stand. 3 of these people that you'll hear from are the guys that sustained injuries. Throughout this section of video, there will be a number of people that you'll be hearing from, each one sharing their perspective of what happened. On screen now is a breakdown of who they all are. The 3 surviving victims, Nick Perring, Nick Prado, and Kyle Zentek. In addition to these 3, you'll also be hearing from Zach Volpo, Austin Contreras, Nick Pletke, and Nick Acevedo. One quick note before I show you what they have to say. One of the boys, Austin, the audio associated with his appearance is absolutely unlistenable, and I wouldn't expect anyone to sit through that. When it gets to his section, I'll narrate out what he says, but I thought I'd give you a warning of this in advance, otherwise it could be quite jarring when it happens.
So at this party, was it what happened? People just drinking? Was there music?
Yeah, there was music. People were drinking, talking, laughing, having a good time. Typical party environment.
And what was the occasion? Why were you there?
It was just a Thursday night hanging out with friends. None of us had class on Fridays, so just hanging out with the boys.
Did you know all the people there?
No, I did not.
Did you know most of them?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Friends of yours?
Yeah, correct.
And you mentioned that you were there for a couple drinks. Were you drinking that night?
Yes, I was.
You recall how many drinks you had?
I don't recall.
Okay. Other people you watched were drinking?
I mean, yeah, it was a party.
Okay.
People were drinking.
What was the mood about the party?
I remember talking to Colin earlier that day, and he was saying, hey, come on over to our house. We're going to have a couple of beers, have a couple of drinks, and hang out. And I said, that's awesome. My roommates at the time, I said, yeah, let's do it. Let's go over. And I had 2 roommates that came with me to that party.
What was the mood that night?
Pretty mellow. Okay. Everyone was having a good time.
What was the mood amongst the gathering, at least the people that you saw?
I remember laughter. I remember smiles. I actually remember taking a photo that night with a couple of people, and we were actually hanging out, smiling and laughing. No one was in a depression type of state.
So everybody, it was a good.
It was a good time.
mood?
Yeah, it was a good mood.
How many people showed up for this party?
Approximately 20, 25 people.
Okay, did you know all of them?
At the time in the building, I knew all of my friends except for a couple of females that I had not met before.
When we were at the courtyard, a lot of people kind of come in and come out. And so when you hear, people talking and people hanging out, laughing, people come up to the courtyard. And so 4 Sigma Chi pledges at the time that I noticed, that I recall, were out there and trying to get into the gathering or party, I should say, that we had. And I politely went up to them and asked them to leave. After that,
how did they respond to that request?
they responded in a polite manner as well. And I thought everything was going to be okay. I've done this before. It wasn't a big deal asking people to leave an area.
Was there a specific reason why you guys were asking people to leave?
We necessarily didn't want to have any big party that night. We just wanted to have a couple of friends to hang out. If it was a big party, we probably would have let them in, of course. But we were just having a couple friends over. At the end of the day, we just really didn't want anything crazy. Like I said, it was a Thursday night.
When I got there, it's hard to put an exact number on it. I wasn't exactly counting how many heads were there. I'd do a rough estimate of 50 to 75 people maybe.
About 5 to 10 minutes later, I walk back outside, and they're still there. And so once again, I asked them politely to leave. I think they said, I do not recall what they said. And then I walked back inside.
Okay. Was it still polite?
It was still very polite, the way I had my manner towards them.
And them in response?
In response was still polite.
All right. Did they ultimately leave?
I suppose not, because when I walked back I walked back inside after the second time talking to them. And when I walked back outside, I believe, from my understanding and what I recall that day, that I saw Nick Peary and Colin Bro out there. And I believe Nick Prado. And then I heard a little bit of yelling. And that's when I guess things got a little out of hand that night.
I was outside kind of monitoring, making sure people weren't coming in and people were leaving peacefully. I heard Colin's voice and I recognized that he was in a verbal argument with other individuals. At that point, I saw Colin talking to 3 individuals, yelling back and forth, 3 individuals and him, and they had proceeded to just yell at each other verbally and a lot of chest puffing, I guess, if you will.
Did you see anybody punching anybody?
No, I did not.
Anybody kicking anyone?
No.
Anything physical at all?
Nothing physical at all.
Did you see anyone with weapons at that point?
Not at that point.
How long did that verbal interaction in the courtyard go on?
1 to 2 minutes.
All right, what happened next?
We were trying to get them out of the courtyard, and we ended up walking towards Franklin into the street and then eventually to Mountain View.
Okay. So were you amongst the folks hurling insults, or what were you doing?
I was sitting back watching.
Okay, was anybody else sitting back watching?
Zach Volpo.
I saw a cluster of people in the middle of the street.
When you say cluster, can you give us an estimate how many people?
Best of my memory, I would say 5 to 9 people, 5 to 8 people would be probably closer.
Okay. Were there people out there that you recognized?
No, it was dark in the middle of the street. I couldn't really recognize any faces. I could tell that they weren't telling jokes in the middle of the street. There was a bit of an argument, words being exchanged, but I have no idea what they were saying.
As you were jogging up, did you hear what was being discussed?
A lot of derogative terms. Would you like me to express them?
Sure.
It was a lot of fuck you, you guys need to leave, and then from their end it was basically you guys can't kick me out, blah, 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 and just back and forth, a lot of cussing, calling each other more derogative terms.
Did you see any actual touching, any physical confrontation?
Just kind of light pushing, shoulder tapping.
You mean
Yeah,
just
nothing no punches thrown yet. Yeah.
Okay. So you said no punches thrown yet. Does that suggest that you did see punches thrown?
Yes.
At some point in time, Austin, you decided to do something. Is that correct?
Yes.
What was that?
Austin says, I decided to punch someone. I was drunk and acting stupid. I ran up and threw a punch to the closest guy to me. I took the swing and everybody started scattering in all directions. I hit him just in the cheek, the chin-cheek area. It was a standard punch. I don't really weigh that much, so it couldn't have hurt that bad. After the punch, I just turned around and booked it away.
As he passed me, he made a comment along the lines of, I got him good, or I cracked him, or something like that. I don't remember exactly what he said.
Following that punch, did you see anybody leave the confrontation?
I can't remember.
I'm sorry?
I can't remember.
Okay.
It was basically just the two parties squaring up, and there was no like actual fight or a brawl, and I remember after that it was probably about 30 seconds of that, 30 seconds to a minute, and I remember Stephen walking out from the dark, the parking lot to the right.
Stephen who?
Stephen Jones, the shooter.
Did you know him at the time?
No.
I saw a light. I saw a flashlight. And like I said, I was about, moving towards 50 to 60 yards away, now probably hitting 40 yards away. And I see a flashlight. And I thought, hey, maybe it's a security guard or a police officer breaking the altercation up. And like I said, I didn't drink too much, and I wasn't underage. I was underage. And so I went over there to see if I could stop the altercation or see if I could do anything.
I noticed the flashlight only because it was pretty bright, almost blinding. I thought for a second it was a police officer. I never been hit with a light that bright before in my life. But I was blinded for a minute by the light, and I noticed it was shining around, kind of scanning the area.
Pointed it at Colin and Nick and screamed, police, like hands up or freeze, something along the lines of that.
I remember seeing a light, and I remember seeing Colin with the flashlight right on his face, and then I heard gunshots.
What happened next was I heard boom, boom. And then I knew, it sounded like a cap gun. I really didn't understand what it was at the time. And that's when I kind of started, picking up my pace of speed, I should say. And at that time, would you like me to keep going, sir?
Yeah.
And at that time, when I kept picking up my pace of speed, I saw the light, and I saw that a man had his hands up and shot Colin twice.
I didn't hear the initial gunshots, and I saw him fall, and I wasn't sure why I didn't put the two and two together. So I didn't know what happened before that. He was yelling at those three individuals. He turned, took 2 steps maybe, and then collapsed in the rocks.
So did you approach that interaction?
I did.
And were you running, walking?
Jogging. Up until I reached, until I saw Colin fall, and at that point, I sprinted and jumped over the bushes that you had pointed out.
You talked about jumping over a bush. Describe where you jumped.
So I came from this direction, and I jumped diagonal over this bush to get to Colin.
And then you described earlier that you were shot at that point.
Yeah, while I was jumping.
Right after I watched Colin get shot, Nick Pearing jumped in the air, almost as if he was trying to dodge the bullet. And that's when I saw Nick Pearing midair get hit and fall to the ground as well.
As I jumped over the bush, I was shot in my, well, first of all, I saw the flashlight turn to me. I was shot in my right arm, and at like a momentary second after that, I was shot in my left hip. And I fell from that jumping position into the pavement of the parking lot on my face.
Did you know at the time that you were being shot?
I didn't know. I didn't register it until afterwards, and then I realized when I saw a bunch of blood that I had been shot and we had been shot.
I ran up to the scene to grab Colin, and Steven pointed the gun at me, and I called him a freak. I called him a psychopath. And at that time, he started crying after that. And I picked up Colin and propped him on my leg and secured his wound.
When you said you took care of Colin, what did you mean?
I tried to keep him conscious. I was talking to him, but his eyes were closed, and I was making sure his wound was secured.
Besides what you've already said, did you say anything else to the shooter?
Yeah, I asked him why he did it.
And what did he say?
He said, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know.
After you heard those pops, did you see what was going on in that group?
I'm a college kid. I didn't assume that they were gunshots, so I went to go see what type of fireworks they were setting off in the parking lot. Started putting the pieces together. I saw my friend Nick peering on the ground.
Where was he?
He would have been closest to me. I can't say exactly with words, it's just too hard to explain. But he was in like agonizing pain, and I saw a girl on top of him, and everything started coming together, and I had realized that my best friends had just been shot.
After you heard these shots, what did you do?
I ran toward Colin.
Did you know at the time that it was shots?
Yes, I did.
Why did you run toward the shots, Nick?
I'm sorry?
Why did you run toward the gunshots?
Because my friend was in trouble, and I saw him bleeding.
Did you see Colin fall?
I did.
How did he fall?
Forward.
Did he brace himself at all?
No.
And what did you see when you got there?
He was on his back. His shirt was covered in blood. His eyes were wide open. He was looking up at the sky. He didn't say a word.
After that is when I recognized Colin, and I saw Nick Acevedo cradling him. But Colin wasn't just on the ground, he was fighting for his life.
I was just shaking him, trying to talk to him.
Was anyone else near you at that point?
I recall Nick Acevedo being next to me, holding Colin with me for a good amount of time. I remember hearing a lot of yelling going around me. I wasn't sure really what was going on. I turned around because I knew that, my friends had just gotten shot, and I wanted to identify the shooter.
Was it at the point you turned around that you saw the shooter?
Yes.
Okay, describe where he was.
He was on the ground about 10 feet from me.
And was anybody around him?
I do remember people around him, but I don't recall who it was.
I got hands on him, yes,
Can
sir.
you describe the physical interaction between the two of you to the best of your ability?
The best of my ability, I believe I tried to get on top of him when he was knelt down and tried to more or less get him in a type of chokehold or something to resist, and so he wouldn't have any hand movement. So I could potentially try to get the gun out of the back pocket. This was probably only another 15, 20-second type endeavor. And when I did that, I was unsuccessful, and I ran away because I was scared.
Did you knock him down?
I did knock him down.
All right. Do you recall how that went?
I do not recall, sir.
All right. Did you stay on your feet, or did you go down as well?
I think I potentially might have gone down in like a kneel format.
Okay.
And I popped back up. Like I said, I got very scared
What made you scared?
that he was going to shoot again.
All right. Did he get his hand on the gun?
I believe he got his hand on the gun again.
It looked like, well, no, he reached for something that was behind him, which I deduced was the weapon he used to shoot down four of my friends. Nick and I put our hands up in assumption that it was a weapon, and we booked it away.
I was looking at the shooter, and I noticed he was reaching behind his back for something.
Okay. Did you find out what that was?
Yeah, I did.
All right. What happened next?
I took a couple steps forward, and I got the gun pulled on me, and that's all I remember.
Mikey laid on top of me at that point and said to be quiet, that he was still shooting. And I think I yelled at her to get off of me because it hurt.
I got shot through the neck.
Did you know immediately that you were shot?
Yes, I did.
Why?
Well, do you want me to explain it to you?
Yeah, please.
Pretty much it's the most intense pain you've ever felt in your life, pressure-wise and sharpness. But at the same time, the adrenaline and the shock kick in, and you're so amped up that it's almost like you're being numbed, like someone has an ice pack on the wound, but you had just gotten hit with a sledgehammer.
So you could feel the shot to your neck at that point?
Definitely.
When you got outside, do you recall what you saw, if anything?
It's just mostly like still pictures.
Okay. Do you have a hard time remembering that night?
Yeah. I started running over towards there.
Is that the next memory you have after seeing him fall?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you recall right after that?
A light shine in my face that was really bright. As soon as I saw that light, I decided to turn around and try and run away. When I turned around to run, just felt something, and I dropped to the ground.
Okay. You felt something. Describe that.
It was the most painful thing, but I didn't feel a thing. I just couldn't move.
Okay.
I think I took maybe one or two more steps, and and I was lying on the ground.
What's the next thing that you remember, Kyle?
I believe it was Paul Kinder that was lying next to me and just saying, "Hang on, hang on."
Yeah, Paul Kinder is...
He's another Delta guy.
Okay. Do you recall seeing him earlier?
I don't. I can't even make for sure it was him. I just feel like I remember hearing his voice.
Do you recall hearing anyone else's voice leading up to that point?
No.
Just images and the feeling that you felt?
Just like still like shadow pictures, basically. Next thing I come in and I'm in an ambulance and they're saying something, but I can't make it out. And that's it.
Okay. What's the next thing that you remember after that?
Waking up in the hospital. A couple days, like Saturday, I believe, or Friday.
Okay.
The individuals who are in Stephen's group would also have the chance to share their story. There are 4 people total in this group, and I'll let Stephen introduce them all.
Hello, my name is Stephen Jones.
Stephen, you're obviously the defendant in this case.
Yes.
And as of October 8th, October 9th, how old?
I was 18.
How many weeks into your college experience were you at that point?
4 weeks.
You remember the events of October 8th?
Yes. Earlier we had study hours in the Klein Library, so we went into the library to study. And then that was around 7 o'clock. And then after that was over and we had finished studying, we decided to go to the Grove.
Where did you park your car when you went to the Grove?
In the Mountain View parking lot.
And who went with you to the Grove?
Shay McConnell, Jacob Mike, and Hunter Todd.
What did you guys do there?
We played Guitar Hero for about an hour.
It was social gathering. There was I think they were playing Guitar Hero.
We just hung out, and then after about an hour, we decided to leave. Like we kind of got bored and decided to leave.
We heard of a courtyard party and then headed that way.
Did you have any drinks that night?
I didn't.
Was there any marijuana?
Not that I know of.
Okay. Did you notice if your friends, Hunter, Shay, or the defendant had any alcohol at that point?
Not that I can remember. I got a phone call while I was there from my girlfriend, and I actually took it outside, so I wasn't present at the place for too long.
We walked out downstairs because we were on the 5th floor of the Grove, and we walked downstairs. And I was talking to Jake because he had just finished up a call with his girlfriend, and then we started walking back toward Mountain View. Down Franklin Avenue, there was a lot of noise and a lot of, parties going on in the apartments there.
At some point, were you unable to locate Hunter?
Yes, yeah. About halfway back to my car, we lost track of Hunter. We couldn't find where he was.
Hunter was walking a little bit ahead, and when we got about towards where we were parked, we noticed that he was not in front of us anymore. We didn't know where he went.
I saw a girl ahead of me, so I left and went to go talk to her and let the guys know, I'll see you guys in a couple minutes, I don't know. So I went into one of the units.
Did the defendant, Shane McConnell, or Jacob Mike ever meet up with you at that location?
No.
He decided to go in, and then it was just the three of us.
We start texting him, like trying to figure out where he is, and then we decided to stop and try to call him and get him on the phone because we didn't want to just leave without him. So Shay started calling him on the phone, and then Jake and I just kind of stood there and waited.
We were on Franklin Street, standing on the sidewalk in front of the courtyard apartments. We just kind of jogged across the street towards Steven's car. We were just going to wait for Hunter in the car at that point, try to get a hold of him. And, yeah.
And what happened next?
We were about halfway across the street and heard the door behind us open, and out came like 6 or 7 guys, I believe, and they were shouting at us, asking what we were doing here, using various cuss words, and just trying to intimidate us, it felt like.
Where were you guys planning on going up until that point?
We were going to go home.
We were crossing the street when a group of people showed up behind us.
Do you know where they came from?
From behind the courtyard.
They were saying, what the fuck are you doing here? Get the fuck out of here. Various stuff like that.
They were saying stuff like, what the fuck are you doing here? Get the fuck off my porch. You go back to the freshman dorms. You don't fucking belong here. I'll fuck you up, you pussy, stuff like that.
Well, how many people do you think?
I can't say for sure, but 5 to 7 maybe, a group. Well, at first we didn't know what was going on. We kind of engaged them, I guess. We were like, hey, what's going on? And they didn't seem to no.
It was kind of, they were all feeding off each other and just spewing the same kind of remarks.
They were obviously drunk and angry.
Had you done anything to provoke these guys?
Nothing whatsoever.
And were you saying things back?
Yes.
Like what?
I was like, we're leaving. Leave us alone. I don't know what you guys are trying to do. We're leaving. We weren't trying to do anything. We're just trying to call our friend.
A whole bunch of people, a whole bunch of dudes, and they were screaming and yelling and stuff. And next thing I know, I just got punched.
One of them punched Steven, and that was when we were like, okay, this is serious.
We were still kind of being defensive, and these guys were pursuing us. And from behind the group of guys, someone ran up and punched Steven in the face.
We realized that they were hostile for some reason, and we backed across the street into the sidewalk of Mountain View, and we retreated that way, I guess you could say.
I started freaking out, like, what the heck is going on? People were still yelling at us, get the fuck out of here, and I was just trying to keep my distance. I could not figure out what was going on at all.
Where were you punched?
In the mouth.
How hard were you punched?
It just rocked my world, like just really hard.
Were you expecting that to happen?
Not at all.
Had you done anything physically or verbally to provoke that?
Not at all.
Is it something that you think could fairly be described as a sucker punch?
Yes.
Did the punch cause you any problems with your vision?
Yeah, it knocked my glasses off, and then as I kind of fell, my everything went dark, went black, and then everything went white, like a flash of white, and then I slowly started to regain my vision. And then as I was getting back up, I felt someone behind me try to grab the back of my shirt, and I started running toward Mountain View.
Well, we were trying to figure out why they were doing this, so we were just saying, like, we don't want any problems, like, what's going on? And they were asking, like, what are you guys, like, where are you from? What are you doing? It was all just questions, very basic.
I kind of put myself in an awkward position where I was going the wrong direction that I needed to go, so I kind of had to work my way back through the crowd and in order to get to the parking lot.
What do you mean by that, going the wrong direction?
I kind of veered off and was almost going back up Franklin in the direction towards the Grove, just trying to get my distance from these people. After I worked my way back in, I saw Jacob Mike get pushed down, and then following that, another guy came over and shoved me to the ground.
Did you see Jake and Shay near the group of 10 to 12?
Yes.
What was going on, best you could tell?
They were surrounded and getting pushed and shoved and cursed at, and I saw Shay get punched, and then I saw guys kind of like, just surrounding him, like they weren't letting him leave. I thought they were going to get beat up really bad.
We got pushed on the ground initially, both me and Shay, once we got into that sidewalk area, and Shay went one way and I went straight adjacent to Mountain View.
Along that sidewalk?
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off.
And he went towards I don't know, actually, a different way. But after that, a few people followed me further in, and I lost track of Shay.
When I was running, they were saying stuff like, get the fuck back here, what the fuck are you scared of, stuff like that. When I started running away, the 3 or 4 guys started chasing me from that first punch, and then as I started getting toward Mountain View, I thought that they might not be behind me anymore, so I kind of stopped to look back, and then I didn't see anyone at first, so I started walking back toward my friends, and then those guys who were chasing me were right back there and started running at me again, so I started running. I kind of panicked. I was really scared, and I was freaking out. And I remember those guys, and then I just decided I turned right and ran toward my car. They're still chasing me at that point, and saying all kinds of stuff, and then I reached in my back left pocket, which was where my electronic key fob was for the door in my car. So I started frantically mashing all the buttons on the key fob to try to get it unlocked, and then it unlocked and the car alarm went off for a second and then turned back off, and I got to the car.
Had you seen where the defendant went after he was punched?
No.
I sit in the driver's seat, and they're right behind me, and I'm panicking, and I know they could be on me at any second. So I start frantically looking for my keys, because my key fob is separate from my keys, and I usually keep my key fob in my back left pocket, but I didn't know where my keys to start the car were, so I started frantically looking, and then I realized that I wasn't going to be able to find them before those guys were on top of me. You know, I didn't have my glasses, and I couldn't really see, and my legs were shaking, and I was, panicked, and I realized, oh my God, I have to do something, so I got the gun out of my glove box. I instinctively chambered around, and I yelled as loud as I possibly could, "Don't fucking move, I have a gun, get on the ground."
Where were you when you yelled that out?
In the driver's seat. Then I turn around and I look, and those guys who were chasing me were, over there, and I yelled it again. And I said, "Get on the ground, don't fucking move, I have a gun." I couldn't really see too well, so I turned the flashlight on, and I got out of the car, and I kind of saw them over there, and I moved toward them, and I said it again as loud as I could, "Don't fucking move, I have a gun, get down."
The next thing I remember is seeing Steven come up from the parking lot next to that walkway next to Mountain View, and he had a light from what I saw, and I didn't know what it was, but he was yelling something, and I don't remember what that was. Couldn't be made out.
I turned around after 10 yards or so, and that's when I saw Steven holding a gun, pointing it towards two of the guys.
The one on the right, he said, "I'll fucking kill you." And then the one on the left called me a pussy or something. And then they charged at me. And then at the last second, the one on the right lunged toward me.
I saw people move towards Steven, and then shots were fired.
Describe moving forward. What did that look like?
I think there were 2, maybe 3 people, and they rushed towards him.
One of the 2 men looked like he lunged towards Steven, and then Steven fired two shots into him and turned towards the other guy and shot one shot towards him.
They charged straight at me with their fists like this, as fast as they could, looking me dead in the eye. And then right at the last second, the one on the right lunges toward me.
What's going through your mind at this point?
Fear. I was just, oh my God, I'm gonna get really hurt right now.
The first person who was shot twice just fell to the ground like a rock, and the second person kind of like fell to his knees first, and from my memory grabbed his neck. Maybe he was shot in his neck, I don't recall.
At that point, I kind of went into a bit of a shock, and I don't remember how many shots initially were fired, but I saw people fall on the ground, and then the light came like panned over me, I guess, and I put my hands up and I was like, it's me, Jacob. And at that point, Steven told me to call the police, and I pulled my phone out, and I did.
I turned around and ran towards the roundabout of Mountain View because I thought he was going to mistake me for someone, or he was just going crazy. I just didn't know what to think was going on at the time, and I just wanted to get out of there.
Were you running away from these people you confronted earlier, or from the defendant?
At that point, I was running away from the entire situation.
Okay. And why was that?
I didn't want to get shot.
When you saw the defendant, when you noticed that the defendant had a gun in his hands, were you thinking, this is great, now we're going to get away from here?
No.
What were you thinking?
I was scared.
Of who?
Steven, the situation.
What happened when you fired?
Yeah, one on the right went down, and then I swiveled toward the left, and then the one on the left went down as well.
Fired shots at both of them.
Yes.
They both go down.
Yes.
What's the very next thing that you do?
I scanned left to right, looking to see if anybody else was coming toward me, and then everybody else was still back up on the sidewalk, the service drive. So I tucked the gun in the back of my waistband, and I ran over to the one on the right to try to give first aid, because I'm first aid certified, so I went over to try to treat his wounds. I kneeled down next to him, and I propped his head up, and I noticed blood like around this area, so I started applying direct pressure, and then as soon as I did that, there was another guy right there next to him, and he goes, "What the fuck is wrong with you, you psycho?" And he pushes me backwards.
I don't know where the gun went, but someone was choking Steven, and he was saying something, and I tried to pull him off in a rear naked choke just behind him with his arm around his neck. After that, I told him, like, we have to help your friend, like, what are you doing? And we did that, and we were both, all three of us were kneeled next to one of the victims.
Who were the three of you?
That person that I don't know.
Okay.
Me and Steven.
And what was going on at that point?
We were trying to put pressure on the gunshot wound and take his vitals, and they were kind of arguing. And,
who was arguing?
Steven and
this other kid?
This other guy.
Okay.
Someone from behind me ran up and tried to grab the gun from my waistband. And then as soon as that happened, all the rest of them kind of just piled on top of me. And so I reached as quickly as I could behind my back and got my hand on the gun, and I pushed it downward into my pants as hard as I possibly could. And he was tugging back on it. And then the rest of them, they were, kicking and punching and wailing. And one guy was stomping on my stomach, and they were screaming, "You shot my friend, you fucking psycho! And, I'll fuck you up. I'll fucking kill you. The guy who was stomping on my stomach, he said, "You just shot my friend. What the fuck is wrong with you?" And then one guy had me in a headlock, and he was just screaming like "fuck you" over and over and over. Then somebody had my left arm, and they were twisting it as hard as they possibly could, and he was just, psycho, fuck you, that kind of stuff.
Fair to say you're overpowered at this point?
Yes. I was screaming as loud as I could, help, help, like a really high, loud scream. Like, I thought they were going to get my gun and kill me with it.
Next thing you remember?
I held on for my life, and I just, it was getting increasingly desperate. I realized I wasn't going to be able to hold them off forever, because there was like 4 or 5 of them, and they were kicking, it's like one of them was still pulling on the gun, and I was getting kicked and punched, and I just knew that I wasn't going to be able to break free, so I pulled the gun upward out of my pants.
What did you do with it?
I fired in the air to try to get them to run away.
Were you trying to hit anybody?
No.
At that point, I was, I don't know, in shock, but I can't tell you how many gunshots, or if there was more than one, like, volley, I guess.
I was frozen and didn't know what to think, and then turned around and ran.
Where did you go? Which direction?
Towards the top of Mountain View. So when I got near the very front of Mountain View and rounded the corner to the street, I remember hearing other shots after that.
How many?
From my memory, 4 to 5.
The ones who were in a circle in front of me that I could see, they all kind of turned away like this. After I broke free, I stood up and backed away toward the corner of that parking lot by the rock slope to try to get the high ground so I could see better and see if anybody was coming at me.
Were you approached by someone?
Yes.
Describe that for the jury, please.
He came running up this side toward along that fence by the soccer field, I think it is, and he reached behind me and tried to put his hand on the gun again.
Was he someone that you recognized from earlier?
Yes.
Where did you recognize him from?
From that corner trying to get the gun the second time. I had the gun behind my back like this to try to guard it, and then I was kind of facing toward the parking lot and he came up from the fence, so it was my left, and I looked at him, and then I kind of went to bring the gun forward, and then he just turned around and ran away, so I put it back behind my back. Like right after that, I feel somebody tap me on the shoulder, and I turned around and he said, hey, you can put the gun down, you're safe now. And I goes, no, that guy keeps trying to get my gun. And he goes, no, you can put it down here, I won't let anybody take it, you're safe now, you can just, put down the gun. Then after I put the gun down, I heard the sirens, I heard police sirens, and I saw red and blue lights on Franklin Avenue, so I started walking toward the police. I was really relieved. I thought, oh my God, I'm safe now, like the cops are here, I can just go to them and it's all over, it's perfect, they can protect me. The officer in that car opened the door and he had a rifle pointed at me, and I had my hands up like this, and my face was bleeding, and he goes, where's the shooter? And I said, I'm the shooter. And he goes, where's the shooter? I said, I'm the shooter. And then he arrested me.
Throughout the trial, the state would make the argument that Stephen was not acting in self-defense at all. In fact, quite the opposite. He was retaliating, seeking vengeance, and at one point is even characterized as an assassin. They say that a heated verbal exchange took place with minimal physical contact, and at no point were Stephen and his friends in any real danger. They say that at some point during this altercation, Stephen made the decision to go to his car, and it was there where the beginnings of a premeditated murder occurred. Even though Stephen claims he was chased back to his car, it's actually not argued by the defense that this indeed happened. The defense's characterization of this moment is that Stephen was experiencing great paranoia and panic, therefore believing he was chased when likely he wasn't. The state thinks otherwise though, and accuse him of outright lying about his thought process in that moment. The only reason he tells people now that he thought he was being chased is to bolster his claims of self-defense. Stephen had mentioned that when he got to his car, he couldn't find the keys to start it due to the fob being separate from the actual key. These keys, however, were discovered in the front pocket of his pants. The question is posed, how could he possibly not know that they were there? To add onto this idea that he exited the car with murderous intent, the state would highlight the fact that he had to walk approximately 90 feet to get from where his car was parked, all the way to the location where the shooting took place. In this time, he wasn't attacked, yelled at, not even spotted until he turned the flashlight on. He was in no imminent danger at that point. I'll give you a few highlights from the state's argument throughout trial.
The one on the right says, I'm gonna fucking kill you. The one on the left called me a pussy, I think.
Did you hear anything about killing anyone or harming anybody?
No, sir, I never heard that.
Did you hear the word kill or anybody threaten to kill anybody?
I do not recall.
At any point, did you hear someone say, I'm going to kill you?
I did not.
Or I'm going to hurt you?
I did not.
During your time observing that argument, did you hear anybody use the word kill or say, I'm going to kill you?
No.
Did anyone at that point say, we're going to kill you?
No.
Did you ever hear them say, kill anything?
No.
Did you hear anybody say, we're going to kill you or kill somebody?
No.
At any point, Stephen, during your encounter with this group of 10 to 12 guys, did you see anybody holding something in their hand?
In the very beginning, when they all came out of the house, someone was holding a beer bottle, and I thought I saw them swinging it, or it might have been a rock or something.
Before the shooter presented his gun, did you see anybody with any weapons?
No, I did not.
Prior to or other than seeing that gun, did you see anybody with any weapons?
No.
Did Colin have any weapons?
No, he did not.
Did he have anything in his hands that you saw?
No.
Was anyone carrying a weapon?
No, not that I know of.
Did you see Jake and Shay?
They were surrounded and getting pushed and shoved and cursed at, and I saw Shay get punched.
Did you see anything physical?
Did I see
Between
anything physical?
anybody, yeah.
No, I did not, sir. I didn't even see the punch that kid threw as he ran by. The only way I knew he threw it was the statement that he made as he ran past me.
Other than that punch, did you see any other physical confrontation?
No.
Prior to that, had you seen any physical altercation?
No, I did not.
Nobody throwing punches?
No.
No pushing?
No.
Aside from the punch that you saw being thrown at the defendant and the push to Shay and the push to you, any other physical confrontation or interaction?
There was swinging punches, but other than that, and someone knocked my hat off, and that was it.
All right, when you say swinging punches, did they connect with anybody?
No, they were slow punches.
Slow punches? Were they thrown at you?
Yes.
Okay, and when you say slow punches, you were able to outmaneuver them?
Yes.
Were you able to outdistance them?
Yes.
Were they sloppy? Were they
sluggish? Yeah.
Sluggish, okay. Beyond that shove, was there any other physical interaction you had?
Not that I had, no.
Beyond that and the punch to the defendant and the shove to Jacob Mike, anything else that you recall physical?
No, not that I recall.
When you saw the defendant showing up with this gun, were you excited to see that he had a gun?
No.
Why?
A gun wasn't necessary.
Did you feel like these guys were going to really hurt you?
I thought it was a hostile situation, but there was no point where I thought I was in any situation where my life was at stake, no.
Did you see Colin lunge at him?
I did not see him lunge.
Did you see Colin, or did you hear Colin say anything to him?
I do not recall him saying anything.
You said that Colin took a step forward. How
Yes.
would you describe that step?
It was just a light step forward, just in a questioning manner. He was just trying to see what was going on. There was a high intensity light shining on him, so he was kind of disoriented.
So would you describe it as aggressive or lunging or anything like that?
No.
At any point were you part of any kind of physical altercation?
No, I was not.
At any point were you running or attacking the defendant?
No, I was not.
Were you attacking anybody?
No.
At any point did you ever see a group of people piling on the defendant?
No.
911, where's your emergency? 911.
The guy's killing my friend.
Where are you?
I'm with the police.
Where are you?
Mountain View.
What's going on there?
Someone is attacking my friend.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Don't hang up.
All right. Are you okay, dude?
Stay on the line.
More pressure. Put more pressure. I know. You're trying to hurt me. I'm sorry.
So when you spoke to the police, how did you come to the conclusion that there were people or multiple people around?
When I was talking to the dispatcher, I read over the whole transcript from that, and everything I said was kind of all over the place and strange. And what I was repeating, that I think I said exactly, they're killing my friend, like, yeah, and I was just hysterics and out of my mind, I guess.
Okay, because when you look down or at the defendant,
yeah,
what was happening?
He was choking him.
And there was one person?
Yeah.
At any point did you see anyone surrounded by a group?
I did not.
You were going to kill someone because you thought you were going to be killed, correct?
No, it was never my goal to kill someone.
What do you think happens when you shoot someone in the chest?
They get seriously hurt.
That's what you think happens every time?
Sometimes people who get shot in the chest die.
Right. Like this time?
Yes,
Okay. And you intentionally shot that person, correct?
correct.
You intentionally shot Colin, and you intentionally shot Nick Peering as well, right?
Just Colin and Nick Peering.
You described shooting in there. How many times did you shoot in the air?
I don't remember.
And how did you point your hand?
Upward.
Can you demonstrate?
Yeah.
Just straight above your head.
Not fully extended, kind of bent a little bit.
Nick Prado, how do you account for how he got shot through the neck?
I have no idea.
Or Kyle Zentek in the back?
I didn't know at the time.
You would agree that's not shooting into the air, right?
What isn't?
When you shoot someone in the back, that's not shooting in the air?
Objection, Your Honor. This states the testimony argumentative, lack of foundation, calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Are you disagreeing that you shot Kyle Zentek in the back?
Not on purpose.
Okay. Is that a yes or no?
No.
Okay.
The state have multiple issues with Stephen's story, ranging from inconsistencies with what he said and what other witnesses saw, such as where were all the people standing, the distances between everyone, whether there was actually a dog pile on him or not, and so on. Stephen classified the partygoers as drunk, quick, and dangerous, where, as you heard his friend Jake say, that he found all of the partygoers to be sluggish and easy to outmaneuver. They argue that if he only wanted to use the gun as a scare tactic, a way to deter others from attacking he and his friends, why was it fully loaded and a round chambered? Furthermore, who was this person Stephen says was swinging a beer bottle around aggressively? Not one other witness claims to have seen this. Stephen mentioned earlier that night that his phone had been on 1% battery. This is why when he got in the car, he didn't try to call 911, figuring it had died by that time. But why did he not even check? Why was a 911 call not attempted by Stephen? They say it was because he wanted to dish out his own form of justice. There are more things as well, like how Stephen claimed that he announced he had a gun several times. Although people did hear him yelling something, no one could confirm that it was a gun he was announcing. The defense, as you could imagine, have a much different take on things. For starters, I'll play you some highlights from their argument. Most notable are specific statements that some of the partygoers had made to law enforcement the day following the incident.
Backing back up to line 5, and there were 4 people on the opposite side of us. That's what you said, correct?
Correct.
The next thing you state is 3 of which were like, okay, we're leaving. That's what you told the police, correct?
Correct.
We're leaving is not the same as you can't tell us to go, is it?
I believe not.
You're perfectly clear, both in direct examination and cross-examination, that it was just Colin and these 3 other guys, right?
Correct.
Okay. Well, you told the police something different about that as well, didn't you?
And what was that?
Well, let's look at page 2. Talking about Colin on line 2. And he was like basically kind of cussing, like, get the fuck out of here. And I remember specifically 3 of them, they're like, okay, we'll leave. And then a couple other people came up and were like saying the same thing. Like, you guys got to go. You're not welcome. Blah, blah, blah. All this and that. That was what you told the police, isn't it?
Correct, but I don't know exactly who that was.
Well, these weren't people that were with the 3 guys who were saying, okay, we'll leave. You're saying these are other people that came up and started joining Colin.
I didn't say they joined Colin.
Okay, well, let's go back through it again. You can tell me who you're referring to.
I don't know who I was referring to.
And I remember specifically 3 of them, they're like, okay, we'll leave. And then a couple other people came up and were like saying the same thing, like, you guys got to go, you're not welcome, blah, 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 all this and that. So there were other people there, according to what you told the police originally anyways, also telling these people to leave.
I believe so.
When you spoke to the police, you didn't tell them that you ran up because Colin had fallen. You told them that you ran up because you were trying to calm people down, correct?
Correct.
In fact, you told the police that you were, use your words, mainly trying to calm Colin down. Isn't that what you said?
That is correct, because I didn't know who else was there.
That's what you said to the police the night this happened, isn't it?
That is correct, because I didn't know who the other people were.
When you're saying some other kid was like back away, said we don't want any problems, you're talking about the kid that comes from the parking lot.
I believe so.
You go on to say this kid comes through the parking lot, shines a flashlight, and says back up. That's what you told the police, right?
Correct.
You go on to say, we're like, and naturally, everyone else is still like progressing because we wanted to like make them leave. Right?
Correct.
Who's we?
Well, at that point, it was just me and Colin.
Okay, so you and Colin are naturally still progressing after this individual approaches from the parking lot with a flashlight and says back up. You said.
Well, that's what I said.
Okay. And you again confirmed with the police when you talked to them the night of the incident that these three individuals were not chest puffing or chest bumping. They said like, okay, okay, we'll leave, we'll leave, we'll leave. That's what you told the police, isn't it, Mr. Moore?
Prior to that, they were yelling at each other.
Okay. Wasn't my question. That's what you told the police, even this happens, what I just read, isn't it?
Yes.
Tell the police, not that Colin was shot and then, or fell and you ran over, but rather you tell the police, and I'll refer you to line 17. And so I was like, I was trying to calm people down, and I went over there, and I was like, hey, calm down, calm down. He said, step back. Now, when you say he said step back, you're referring to the person who had the flashlight, correct?
Correct.
He said step back, and I, at the exact moment he said step back, I jumped from the top to the lower part, and that's when I got shot. I got shot like in midair. Those were the words that you gave the police the night this all happened, aren't they?
Correct.
Just how much did you have to drink that night?
I wasn't counting. A couple of drinks.
Do you have any reason to disbelieve a toxicology report indicating that you were 2.5 times the legal limit?
No.
Was Mr. Zintek drinking that evening?
I believe so.
Was he smoking marijuana?
Not that I know of.
Was Mr. is it Prado?
Prado.
Was Mr. Prado drinking that evening?
I believe so.
How much was he drinking?
I didn't count his drinks either.
Was he smoking marijuana?
No.
Was Mr. Brew drinking that evening?
Yes.
Do you have a sense of how much he had to drink?
I wasn't counting his drinks either.
Was he smoking marijuana that evening?
No.
Well, you're nodding your head and you're saying no. Is it?
Oh, sorry, no.
Okay. Did he use any other drugs that evening?
No.
When he's trying to help, he's up near where, was he trying to help Colin or Nick?
I don't recall, sir.
One of those two. He's near them, kneeled down, trying to help.
Correct.
And he's in that location when you decide to try and tackle him and take the gun.
Correct.
And you weren't alone in trying to do that, right?
I was not.
Okay. Do you know how many other guys tried to help you tackle him?
I don't recall. I believe to.
Some of those guys were punching him, trying to knock him out, right?
I don't recall, sir.
You don't recall telling the police that some guys were punching him, trying to knock him out?
I don't recall.
Go ahead and take a look at that. Is that the transcript that you reviewed of your interview with the police that night?
There's 3 parts, I believe, so if this is all 3 parts, then correct.
So in that first part, line 3 starts a paragraph. This is you talking, right?
Correct.
Okay. You see there where you told him that you put the kid in the headlock, right?
Yes, correct.
And a couple other kids are start trying to punch him, trying to knock him out, right?
Correct. Okay. So I guess I did say that, and I apologize.
So it's okay. It's been a while. But you would stand by what you told the police that night, right?
Correct.
Okay. So you've got him in a headlock. A couple other guys are punching him, trying to knock him out, right?
Correct.
Now, at the time that you chose to tackle him, he had his gun in his back and he was trying to help one of the injured, right?
Correct, but he just shot 2 people.
Right, and then he put his gun away, right?
Yes, but when you have a shooter like that, you don't know exactly what's going to happen.
So these guys continue backing down Mountain View Drive, and your friends continue to pursue them?
Yes.
So that's the walkway that these guys walked down and your friends pursued them?
Yes.
You do see here on line 15 where you say, I wanted to call the police at that moment, but they were just kept advancing on me. You see that?
Yes.
It's in that same paragraph where you again told the officer that they were following you and trying to hurt you, right?
Yes.
And when you say you, you're referring not just to yourself, but to your friends, right?
Yes.
You remember telling the officer that you felt like they were very aggressive and that they wanted to hurt you guys?
Yes.
And that they weren't going to just let you go?
Yes.
What was going through your mind as you were sitting in the car trying to fumble for your keys?
I was just panicking and like extreme fear. I just thought, these guys just beat me up and knocked out my teeth, and they chased me to my car, and they're telling me they're going to kill me and fuck me up and calling me a faggot, and I just thought they were going to be on me any second, and I was freaking out.
Did you believe that you were safe in the car?
Absolutely not.
Why not?
Because I couldn't find my keys, and I was just like a sitting duck there in my car, and they could run up and drag me out or break the window or anything.
When you're inside your car for 3 or 4 seconds, did you consider closing the door and calling 911?
Yes.
Did you do that?
No.
Why not?
Because my phone was at 1%, and I didn't know where where the cops were, if they would get there in time, and I just
Did you consider just locking the doors and waiting for help to arrive?
No.
Do you think that would have secured your safety?
No, I wasn't safe in my car.
When you removed the pistol from your glove box, were you planning on shooting somebody?
Absolutely not.
When you exited the car and you're announcing that you have a gun and you're telling them to back up or get on the ground, whatever it is you said, were you planning on shooting somebody at that point?
No.
At any time prior to this subject lunging at you while the two individuals have balled fists, did you plan on shooting anybody?
No.
At the time you fired your gun up into the air, did you feel as though you had any other alternatives at that point?
No.
What did you think would have occurred had you not fired your pistol into the air?
I would have eventually just muscle fatigue, and I wouldn't have been able to hold on to my pistol, and they would have overpowered me, and I would have lost it, and they would have shot me with it.
When you fired the pistol from underneath the pile, did you at any time specifically point the gun at any particular person?
No.
In fact, you tried to point the gun straight up in the air so that nobody would be hit, correct?
I was trying to fire in the air to get them to run away.
There are a few pieces of evidence introduced which support Stephen's claim that he was not only being attacked, but fired into the air when the second round of shots went off. He had sustained multiple injuries which indicate that he had received some form of beating. Cuts and abrasions on his arms, back, neck, head and shoulders, a missing tooth, blood on his face and coming out of his nose. To support the argument that he aimed in the air and not at any specific individuals, the trajectory of bullets that hit Kyle and Nick are consistent with the shooter being on the ground and firing upward. What really interests the defense about the bullets being fired up is the fact that next to where the shooting took place, there's a tree. Upon investigation, it's found to have a bullet hole in one of its branches, further supporting this idea that Stephen had indeed been firing upward. There are also 2 bullets which are unaccounted for. They weren't located around the parking lot, and the defense argues that this is because they were shot into the air, and no one knows where they could be now. To look a little closer at the initial round of shots, when Colin's body is examined, stippling is discovered, which an expert indicates that Colin was within 2 feet from Stephen when the shot happened. The defense used this detail to support the idea that Colin had lunged towards the freshman in a vicious manner. Stephen waited until the very last moment, when he really had no other choice, to fire his gun. To throw a little doubt onto the credibility of the state's witnesses, it is learned that most of them had high intoxication levels, some of them being over 3 times the legal limit to drive. including the deceased victim, Colin, who was also found to have had Xanax in his system. Overall, the partygoers are painted as irresponsible, drunk, and aggressive, acting more like an angry mob, making poor decisions, rather than rational people. They're characterized as bullies, who terrorized these 3 innocent freshmen who were minding their own business. Stephen, mind you, he received a tooth-loosening punch, which rattled him to the core, and he was intimidated into a state of paranoia and panic that ended in tragedy, but ultimately was instigated by a drunken mob's actions and justified to maintain he and his friends' safety. It's highlighted that not one person in Stephen's group, including Stephen himself, had any alcohol or substances in their system. They were completely sober. The defense attorney would say that one needs to look at the situation from Stephen's perspective to be able to understand whether the threat he perceived was genuinely something that made him fear for his life. After an incredibly lengthy trial, both sides would make their closing statements.
You don't need a weapon in your hand to be a threat to someone's life, especially if your BAC is a .285, you have Xanax in your system, and you're charging downhill at somebody, especially if you're tackling someone on hard pavement, trying to get their gun. Stephen waited until the last moment before he pulled the trigger on the shots that hit Mr. Brew. Mr. Brew was charging downhill at Stephen, and he got within 2 feet before Stephen pulled the trigger. He waited until the last moment. He did not have any choice at that point. That's where he's defending himself. He's defending himself from a lethal threat because he's got someone charging downhill at him, actually 2 people. And if he doesn't pull that trigger, they are going to tackle him and take that gun. Now, they put him in a headlock, they're punching him, they're trying to get that gun from him. And that's why he pulled it out the second time. Now, he didn't have full control when he's doing that because one arm's being grabbed, he's in a headlock, they're punching him, kicking him, so he didn't have full control over where those shots went, but he waited until the last moment then too. He knew that if he waited any longer, they were going to subdue him and take that gun. And if they did that, they would shoot him. Well, maybe they wouldn't, but would you bet your life on it? No, if these guys were the Boy Scouts that the state wants you to think they were, then why did they chase them after Contreras punched Stephen? If Brew is the peace-loving guy that they've tried to claim, then why didn't he say, whoa, Austin, what are you doing, man? Leave these kids alone. Hey, sorry, man, this guy's out of line. Let me get your glasses for you. Did they do that? No. This mob chases them. They weren't done. They made that clear by chasing them, pushing them to the ground, throwing punches. The state has mentioned, you don't bring a gun to a fist fight. This wasn't a fist fight. This wasn't a couple guys that decided to take it outside because they were having a beef about something. This was a mob attack. These guys were drunk, very drunk, and they attacked 3 freshmen for no good reason. These kids were backing up saying, we're leaving, and they kept attacking them. And even after one of them sucker punched Stephen, cracked him as he said it, they still pursued them. They had at that moment, if they were so peace-loving, they could have said, oh, whoa, we're sorry. This is getting out of hand. Just, we see you're leaving, good. They didn't do that. They chased them. They pursued them. There's nothing in the law that says he wasn't allowed to brandish that gun and go up to them. He has every right to be there. And he's justified in using that force if he's trying to prevent the attack, which is exactly what he was trying to do. He thought that when he went up there, they would recognize they need to leave these guys alone and leave, go back to their party at the courtyard. He didn't know that these guys were that brazen, they were going to attack him. Not just once, but twice. Ask yourself, would you want to take a chance on letting these guys tackle you and get that gun?
Objection improper.
Overruled. That's the viewpoint that you have to look at this case from. What would you do if you were standing there and these guys were charging at you?
Same objection, Judge.
Overruled. Under these circumstances, he acted reasonably. It's not a situation any of us would want to ever be in, But under these circumstances, with these two guys charging right at him, he acted reasonably. He did not have a choice. The prosecutor is trying to sell you this bill of goods that he premeditated, that he was retaliating, that he's an assassin on a rampage, none of which is consistent with the facts. It's frankly laughable to try and claim that Stephen is an assassin, that he was on a rampage. The rampage were these Delta Chis who chased these kids down into that parking lot. That was the rampage. There is no doubt whatsoever that he's innocent of all of these charges. We expect you to find the same.
The defense counsel said the defendant waited to the last minute to shoot. Had no other choice. We're just dismissing accountability completely from this case, aren't we? Because the defendant had a choice when he was at his car not to get out of his car and go toward this group. He had a choice not to bring a gun. He had a choice not to call the police or to call the police. He had a choice every step of the way. And just because he made the wrong decision, the wrong choices, doesn't mean he gets off from these charges. The defendant had choices that he made, and he made the choice to retaliate. The defense wants you to rely on the defendant's own self-serving testimony about, well, I didn't intend on shooting anybody. I didn't intend on killing anyone. Of course he's not going to say that on the stand. So what you have to do is dig a little deeper. Look at the actions. What did he do? The defense kept saying, of course the defendant was in fear. How can the state argue otherwise? Well, here's an example. The defendant shot two people who were unarmed, Colin Brew, Nick Peering, and then he put his gun away. What happened to those 10 or 12 really dangerous people? I guess he wasn't concerned about them. And then later, after he claims to have been piled on by 5 to 10 people, he puts the gun down. Remember, Chase Jones comes out. The sirens are in the air, by the way. He's got no other options. Defendant has to put the gun down at this point. But he does not unload the gun. He does not remove the magazine to make it safe. With all those dangerous people around, he didn't think to make the gun safe so they couldn't use it against him. Actions speak louder than words. Look through your instructions and you'll find that there is no law that says it's okay to just point a gun at people because you have a gun. There is no instruction in there that will tell you what the defense suggested, that it's okay to come up on a group of people and point a gun at them if they're not attacking you, if there's no deadly physical force. The defense suggested that the defendant was under so much pressure, he couldn't make any choices. He was alone in his car. How about picking up your phone and calling the police? You can still do that, by the way, with 1% battery. You know that. How about taking your keys out, turning on the car, and driving away? That was a choice you could have made. How about just arming yourself? If you're so nervous, just arming yourself and staying in your car. Nobody was busting through the windows of the car. Nobody was trying to grab his gun. There was no struggle. All these fast people that were chasing him down, strangely never caught him. Because that wasn't what happened. Proportionality. This is an important concept in self-defense. And what is deadly physical force? It's defined for you in this instruction. It says it's force used with the purpose of causing death or serious physical injury, or force which in the manner of its use or intended use is capable of creating substantial risk of death or serious physical injury. Who besides the defendant was using that type of force? Nobody. Nobody was. Self-defense is just out. It does not apply in this case. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, self-defense goes both ways. Something the defense didn't talk to you about. It goes both ways. When the defendant arrived at that group and pointed the gun in Colin Brew's face, Colin Brew had every right to attack the defendant, to prevent an attack on himself. The defendant was the one that walked 90 feet. Colin Brew is not able to walk 1 or 2 steps to protect himself. And at this point, ladies and gentlemen, you should be firmly convinced about what the defendant did in this case, about the design of his lies, about what the victims testified to, and the young ladies from Mountain View dorm, and how it all comes together to form a picture of murder and of an unjustified shooting. And because of that, the state is asking you to find him guilty as charged on first-degree murder and all counts of aggravated assault. Thank you.
After much deliberation, the jury is unable to reach a verdict. A mistrial is pronounced, and a new trial date is set. Although, Stephen would never make it to trial again. In 2020, he pleads guilty to one charge of manslaughter and is sentenced to 6 years in prison. After counting time served, he was released from prison on August of 2024. It's at this point of the video that I've finished presenting the happenings of the trial, and I'll focus on the victim of this case. It doesn't matter which side of the argument you may find yourself on. It doesn't change the fact, in my opinion anyway, that more than likely, no one started out this evening with the intention to harm another person. Colin was having some drinks with his friends, and probably enjoying the evening, whilst Stephen was unwinding after a long day studying with his buddies. Yes, it ended in violence, and yes, someone is at fault. Whether one believes the partygoers were an aggressive, highly dangerous mob, or Stephen an unhinged, trigger-happy assassin, someone here did something very wrong. For this part of the video, I don't want to look at all of that, the who might be right or wrong. This situation is a tragedy in all senses of the word. Needless violence resulting from confusion, miscommunication, aggression, and potentially even a side of too much testosterone. Colin Brew's death is not just the result of a horrible incident, but a loss to so many people. He was a friend and a family member. That's what I'd like to look at here. Here's a few words from friends and loved ones that I found regarding the young man. He was serious about his studies. Brew was a junior business major from Colorado and an honors student. He had already landed an internship in London for the following summer. He was into lacrosse and snowboarding and worked a 6 a.m. shift as a lifeguard at a Flagstaff pool. With his big grin and a mop of shaggy hair, he was the type of person who had many friends. When my son came to NAU his freshman year, I didn't expect him to be perfect. I expected him to make mistakes, to learn from them, and become the man that God intended him to be. He was doing that. Problems aren't solved by pulling out a gun. I sank into a deep depression after my son died. I withdrew from everyone and tried to end my own life. Time has healed nothing. I have learned to live with my pain, and I still have days when the pain is stronger than I am. What a great life Colin had. Cut way too short for no reason. There is always an emptiness without Colin there. I miss his quirkiness and his laughter and his smile, his silly jokes. I just miss him, as we all do. I remember his infectious smile and energetic personality, and of course his amazing skills on the lacrosse field. Even at a young age, he stood out as someone special. Colin was the sweetest boy, always with a smile on his face. I feel so lucky to have had just a little bit of Colin in my life. Anyone that had the chance to meet him was touched by his happiness. There are no words to describe the loss of this wonderful young man. Your child goes off to college. We believe they are safe. But Colin is never coming home. It's a parent's worst nightmare. These words written here coming up are some more by Colin's parents. Colin died that night. His friends survived, but they were left with deep scars in their hearts, minds, and bodies. All of these boys were doing well in school. They held jobs and were so loved by their community. None of them should have experienced this tragedy. Colin had a beautiful soul, a loud, hearty laugh, and the funniest grin ever. He could fill a room with his presence, and had a smile that was so infectious. A true joy lived within him. He worked hard and had a kind heart. We only came to know just how many people were really touched by Colin's life through his tragic death.
you.